Hello whisky fans, time for another dram. December the 15th. Today is the day that in 2001 the Leaning Tower of Pisa reopened after 11 years and after spending $27 million, not to correct its lean but to stabilise it with the existing lean still intact. I always like that one. Just goes to show that humanity might not be perfect, but when we put our minds to it, we can achieve a hell of a lot. So here's hoping for a good dram today. I've replaced my glass. I was using, what was I using before? English whiskey glass. But after that Talisker yesterday, surprisingly peaty, really surprised at that. And it seemed that when I compared it to my open bottle, it seemed that it was legitimately a really heavily peated batch of Talisker 10 that I'd used for the sample, because it didn't match what was in my open bottle, but still fantastic whiskey. So new glass today, because I was not confident that I could remove all of that peatiness from that glass, that I definitely wouldn't taint what I'm nosing and tasting today. So today I've switched to the Ardnamurchan glass. Everyone loves Ardnamurchan, don't they? I do. So, label away, break the seal. No peat as of yet. A little bit of spicy oak on that preliminary bottle nosing. So away you go under the hat. That's out of sight. Colour, reasonably natural looking. A little bit darker than some. I think I forgot to mention actually the colour of that Talisker yesterday. I mentioned early on in the review yesterday that it didn't look like a particularly natural colour, like it was the sort of thing that you'd expect to see from a very old whiskey or a heavily sherried whiskey, and obviously Talisker 10 is neither of those, so it just goes to show the amount of colouring that Diageo are putting into Talisker 10. So although Talisker 10 is a fantastic whiskey, what are they up to? What are they playing at? So this one here at least looks a little bit more natural than that. Quite a strong woodiness on this one, and not just the peppery oakiness that you get from the Talisker 10 yesterday. It's more of a very active sawdust, kind of like the smell of like guinea pigs and hamster cages when you've got all that sawdust and wood chippings. Very intense, spicy, raw, very prominent oakiness. I think there's a little bit of maltiness in there. But really it's very wood dominant, very overpowered by the woodiness, on the nose at least. There's a little bit of maltiness, just not even particularly fruity or sharp. You can just tell that this is, I think it's a malted barley spirit. Probably put into some, probably like virgin oak casks perhaps. Toasted oak, oak spice. Little tiny hint of smoke perhaps. But I think that might be coming through from some barrel char rather than actual peat. So not a huge amount going on there. A lot of oakiness. A little bit of sort of malted barley grains. Dry oak, burnt oak. Let's see how it tastes. I think my guess for this one would be it's not underpowered, so that's one positive. It, I would guess, probably maybe 43, absolute tops 45% perhaps. Probably 43, and there's so much oak on this one. I think that this one is either going to be some sort of virgin oak matured whiskey, or perhaps even a bourbon. Definitely has quite an American feel to it. Possibly a rye whiskey, or a rye heavy bourbon perhaps. There is a spiciness there, but I'm unsure if that spiciness is coming through from some rye or just some of that spicy raw oak. Definitely getting a little bit of a nuttiness there, a little bit of a peanut brittle note, which again is something that I quite often associate with bourbons and American whiskies. So I would possibly guess that this might be maybe an American single malt, Balcones, something like that. You know, there's lots of distilleries in America now which are not producing just bourbons but single malts as well. Perhaps one of those. A little bit of a Parma Violet note coming through, which again I think is coming through with that oak spice. So I must admit that this is not my kind of thing. It's not the kind of thing that I go for, and I'm guessing that there's some kind of virgin oak or freshly charred oak or some sort of very modern oaky finish or maturation going on with this one, and when I see that sort of thing, it's not the sort of thing I buy, but it does seem fairly well made. It's fairly robust, it's got a lot of flavour and decent amount of intensity, and I think that's probably helped by the fact that this is a reasonably healthy ABV. It's not 40%. More of that nuttiness coming through. Sweet, nutty caramel, peanut brittle, oaky, burnt oak, grains, toasted grains. As for an age, definitely not old. It really has a very bourbonised theme going on. Perhaps 5 or 6 years old, something like that. Let's see what we've got. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see if this is our first bourbon in the calendar, because I believe we've had Mackmyra, we've had Wild Whisky, so by that logic we wouldn't be surprised if there's a bourbon in here. Glengarriff series, West Cork Distillers, so that's going to be an Irish whiskey. Bog Oak charred cask finish. So I think I did mention possibly a charred oak finish or maturation, and it is exactly that, 43%. Actually, I quite like that nuttiness that's coming through on this. It's really not my kind of thing, but I like that peanut brittle note on this one. Peanut brittle and caramel. It's decent. Not my kind of thing at all, but it's decent, well-made whiskey. So this is actually a single malt coming from Ireland at 43%, and I think that does very well for 43%. The way that it carries those limited flavours so well could have passed for 45-46% perhaps, so doing very well for what is probably a semi-craft presentation. I'll just show you the label on that one. It's got a nice little logo on it as well. West Cork Distillers, 2003. So yeah, not phenomenal, but a decent dram. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.